Let's talk about a problem that plagues just about every security program, especially right after a period of big growth. It's this slow, quiet erosion of effectiveness. You know that feeling? Where despite all the effort, all the policies, and all the tech, things just feel like they're drifting. We're going to dig into why that happens, and more importantly, what a real, structured response actually looks like. And it all really starts with this core paradox. Most places feel like they're secure because they have the stuff of security, right? The policy binders, the vendor contracts, the incident reports. But, having policies is not the same thing as having structure. And that distinction, well, that's everything. And that begs the big question for this whole diagnostic. If having all the components isn't enough, what's the missing piece? What is this structural gap that lets these well-intentioned, well-funded security programs just slowly lose their edge? Okay, so let's move from just asking the question to actually diagnosing the problem. We're going to put a name to it: structural drift. Think of it like a hidden current that's constantly undermining your security effectiveness, and it usually happens without any big crisis to announce it's even there. Think about your own organization for a second. You have the guards, you have cameras, you have policies on the shelf. But do you still see the same frustrating things happening over and over? Like incidents are handled totally differently depending on who's on shift, or the same exact findings pop up in every single audit. See, that's not a failure of the parts, it's a failure of how they're connected. Let's break down the symptoms. First up, escalation ambiguity. This is what happens when the answer to, should I make the call to the boss, depends on how confident an individual feels or their personal relationship with a manager, instead of a clear black and white non-negotiable rule. This kind of thing creates massive inconsistencies, delayed responses, and honestly, huge exposure for executives. The second symptom is what we call the KPI illusion. So many security teams measure activity, patrols completed, incidents logged. But if those numbers don't have hard thresholds that automatically trigger a specific action or a mandatory review, they're just noise. They're data for a PowerPoint slide, not a real structural control. And number 3, this one might be the most dangerous of all: governance erosion. This is the slow decay of your standards. It's what's happening when your post-incident reviews don't lead to any real changes in training, or when audit findings get a little checkmark but aren't seriously fixed. The baseline of what's acceptable just silently drifts lower and lower. So here's the absolute crucial takeaway. The teams are working hard. The guards are on post. Managers are filing their reports. The problem isn't a lack of effort, and it's not even a lack of having the right pieces. The problem is a fundamental lack of architecture that connects them all into one system that's actually governed. So now that we've kind of diagnosed the disease, let's talk about the cure. And it really requires a huge shift in thinking. You've got to stop focusing on just activity and start building real architecture. Now, what's so important on this slide is the deliberate separation of these roles. This is the secret sauce for a stable architecture. Governance sets the rules, period. Risk tells them what to worry about. Operations just follows the rules. And design builds systems that make following the rules easy. Most security programs fail because these functions all blur together, creating the exact ambiguity we're trying to get rid of. This slide just perfectly captures that transformation. It's about moving from simply reacting to incidents to actually governing them. You stop just writing policies that sit on a shelf, and you start building a real authority architecture. Instead of just doing audits, you create a system that detects incorrect drift automatically. This isn't just some small tweak. It's a profound shift from a reactive mode to a deliberately governed one. Okay, philosophy's great, but how do you actually fix a program that's drifting? Let's get down to brass tacks. We're going to lay out a concrete, actionable plan to install that structural integrity, and you can get it done in the first 90 days. The plan is broken into 3 really distinct logical phases. First, in days 1 to 30, you stabilize authority. No more gray areas about who's in charge or when to escalate. Done. Next, days 31 to 60, that's for installing discipline, making performance something you can actually measure. And finally, in days 61 to 90, you integrate and institutionalize, closing that loop between your audits, your training, and your governance. So within that 90-day plan, here are the 5 most critical moves, the heavy hitters that directly fight back against those symptoms of drift. Number 1, you lock the escalation matrix. 1 severity scale, 1 matrix, 0 exceptions. 2, you publish decision rights. Who decides what and when? It's written in stone. 3, you define guard KPIs that are visible and have real consequences. 4, You run a structured, repeatable audit. And 5, and this is a big one, you wire training directly to incidents, so every major event becomes a lesson for the entire institution. So what's the long-term payoff for all this architectural work? Let's take a look at the prognosis, what the future looks like for a program that actually achieves this level of stability. See, when you build a truly governed system, you don't just get better security. You get tangible, strategic results. You get clear authority thresholds. You get standardized incident classification so you can actually compare apples to apples across different sites. Escalation becomes predictable, performance becomes measurable, and maybe most important of all, governance finally gets true visibility right at the executive level. And we're going to end on this one powerful final thought. We talk about resilience all the time. But resilience isn't something you can just buy or decide to have one day. It has to be built. And as this entire diagnostic shows, the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for resilience is structure. So the question this leaves us with is this: are you just managing security activity? Are you actually building a resilient security architecture?